Corbin, when did the IRS notify TIGTA that you guys had a problem?
So the notification to TIGTA for the incident on February 27th happened that same day.
So you guys talked to Mr. Camus and his guys on February 27th of this year.
I did not personally talk to
Someone
Mr.
at the
Camus,
IRS.
but someone at the IRS did,
Got
yes,
it.
sir.
And how many taxpayers are potentially harmed by the hacking and the breach that took place?
Approximately 100,000, sir.
100,000 people. And then the law requires you to notify Congress when something like this happens, doesn't it?
I'm not familiar with that, sir.
Well, I'll read it to you. This is a letter from your boss, Mr. Koskinen. The Federal Information Security Modernization Act and criteria provided in the Office of Management and Budget Guidance says this, that not later than 7 days after the date of an incident, you should notify Congress, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay. So you're supposed to do it, and you're supposed to do it within 7 days. Is that accurate?
That sounds accurate, yes, sir.
Okay. It doesn't just sound accurate, that's the law.
Yes,
so
sir.
when did you tell Congress?
So I believe we notified Congress within that 7-day time frame, from what I know.
Really? Is that true, Mr. Camus?
Mr. Jordan, I'm not sure when they made notification to Congress.
Because we don't have it until April 6th, which is a lot longer than 7 days. You learn on February 27th, you tell Congress on April 6th. Mr. Corbin?
I'd have to go back and check that, Congressman.
Well, that's important, right?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Koskinen testified on April 6th, and that's when he told us.
So
Testified in front of the Senate.
Yes, Congressman, I have to go back and take that back and confirm that for you, sir.
Well, I don't know that. Well, I would appreciate that, but this is when Congress first learned, was on April 6th, that there'd been an incident. And here's what the statute says. It says, not later than 7 days after the date on which there is a reasonable basis to conclude that a major incident has occurred. Would you describe this as major, Mr. Camus?
The fact that it impacted potentially 100,000 people, I would say so.
Same here. So we're wondering why you waited so long.
I don't have an answer for that, Congressman. I'll go back and find out for you.
We'd like to get that because, frankly, well, let me turn to Mr. Camus. Mr. Camus, is this the first time the IRS has waited to tell Congress some important information?
Mr. Jordan, I'm not aware. I can't answer your
Well,
question.
maybe I'll refresh your memory. There was a little incident that happened over the last several years where the Internal Revenue Service systematically and for a sustained period of time targeted taxpayers based on their political beliefs. You familiar with that situation, Mr. Camus?
I am familiar with that.
You did an investigation into that, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
A couple of investigations, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And was the IRS always forthcoming in a timely fashion with important information in that investigation you did, Mr. Camus?
We found that there were some mistakes that were made and some materials that should have been turned over. That's
Well,
correct.
that's a nice way of saying I appreciate that. You got maybe a career in politics after you're done at TIGTA, Mr. Camus, with that answer. Let me just refresh your memory. The IRS knew there was a gap in Lois Lerner's emails in February of 2014. They did nothing to stop the destruction of backup tapes, actually 421 backups. Do you remember this, Mr. Camus?
Yes, sir, I do.
Because it was your investigation that discovered they destroyed 421 backup tapes, right?
That's correct, sir.
Potentially 24,000 emails, right?
Yes, sir.
And that all happened in March of 2014, a month after they knew there was a gap in our emails. Mr. Koskinen testified in April of 2014, but you know when he told Congress? June 13th, 2014. Is that right, Mr. Camus?
That's correct.
So here we have again the Internal Revenue Service, an agency that has a little bit of influence and impact on American people's lives, with a major breach that the law says you're supposed to tell Congress within 1 week, within 7 days. And what do? They wait 38 days. And you know what? Here's what, to add insult to injury, think about what Mr. Walker, Congressman Walker just talked about. All the suspicious activity that took place before February 27th. In fact, when Mr. Koskinen testified and said, oh, we're putting you on notice, Congress, that there's been a major breach, 100,000 taxpayers potentially impacted, look at what he said in that testimony. He said this, April 6, 2017, Mr. Koskinen testifying in front of the Senate Finance said, quote, we started working with education in October, telling them we were very concerned that the system could be utilized by criminals. So, Mr. Koskinen was on notice that there was problems, potential big problems. He even used the term very concerned clear back in October of last year. We have the major breach take place on the 27th when the IRS tells you, hey guys, we got to look into this. This is real. We've had all these things happen, suspicious activities ahead of time, and they don't comply with the law and tell Congress within a week. they wait 38 days to tell us. It's not supposed to be how it works, is it, Mr. Camus?
Does not sound so.
No,
sir.
and the IRS, once again, the IRS is treating taxpayers the way they're not supposed to, and it's why this committee has been so focused on trying to clean up the mess over there, and frankly, I've been so focused on saying Mr. Koskinen has to go. With that, I yield back, Madam Chair.